Hi, everyone. Thank you and welcome to another session with Accelerate. On this month's Career Spotlight, we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach and really spend time with someone who's dared to accelerate. The focus of this session is really to take a look into a 7-year relationship that I've built and really to use this session to better inform athletes on how to build a network of support of success on and off the field. So join me in welcoming one of my favorite people and biggest supporters, Lisa Carnoy. Lisa is the Chief Financial Officer for Alex Partners, which is a global consulting firm. Prior to that, she spent 23 years at Merrill Lynch and Bank of America, most recently in the division for as the division executive for U.S. Trust and as Bank of America New York City Markets president. In 2013, she was named American Bankers List Most Powerful Women in Finance. So beyond her impressive career, Lisa is a passionate advocate for diversity. She co-founded several organizations, including the Women's Leadership Council at Bank of America Merrill Lynch and at Columbia University, where she also serves as the co-chair on the board of trustees. Additionally, Lisa is also a Columbia track alum, much like myself. So Lions all the way. Lisa, I'm really, really excited to get to talk to you today, and we're really excited to have you here. As we mentioned earlier, this session is really to give athletes an insight into this relationship that you and I have built over the last 7 years, and to really give them some knowledge on how to go about building, relationships with people like you and people who support them. So we're really excited to have you here. We're really excited to get into talking to you.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, Nadia, and I'm always happy to see you and to talk with you. And it's amazing that we've already known each other for 7 years. That's really flown by.
I know. I think every time I see how old Natalie is, I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting older. But before we dive into it, I think I wanted to talk a little bit about how we actually met and, kind of ask you some questions around that. So just as a background, as I mentioned, I was at Columbia as well. And I was speaking at, I think, one of the women's leadership events, I believe. And after I spoke, I remember this so vividly. I was very nervous. I spoke and you just came up to the front of the room and just started talking to me. And I think in that moment, I was obviously nervous because I knew who you were, but also I'm just curious, what was it that made you, I guess, come just talk to me? Because I'm sure a lot of student athletes always try to connect with you, but what was it that made you just, come up to me?
So just backing up a moment, the Women's Leadership Council is a group that I and two other alumni women who were athletes at Columbia, as well as our athletics director at the time, founded about 11, 12 years ago to support women's sports at Columbia. And we have 2 events a year, a cocktail party typically in the fall, and then a luncheon where we could have current athletes speak. And Nadia was selected to speak, which is a big honor. Typically we'd have 1 or 2 speakers. And I was just blown away by your personal story, by how much you'd accomplished already as an athlete and a student, coming to the US from Ghana. Candidly, the fact that you were a track athlete made an instant connection, although you're a jumper and I was a sprinter. But I just felt like you were someone that I wanted to know. And one of the biggest thrills of being part of this organization is meeting the next generation of women. And while you and I have one of the closest relationships of any student I've met in the last decade, there are other students I've also met through my engagement with athletics. And it is just thrilling for me to follow them in their athletic, academic, and professional success. So I really feel blessed that we did meet that day at lunch.
I know it was really life-changing for me. And I mean, beyond the fact that you are also an athlete, why is it so important for you to be so connected to the athletic community, especially at Columbia and especially with other female athletes?
Well, I'm a huge sports fan. I love sports, as you know. My husband and I have 4 kids. They're involved in sports. I'm a big sports fan. We were meant to go this summer to Tokyo and cheer on Nadia and Team Ghana along with Team USA. But I find that I do gravitate to athletes, and I would say a couple things in my career, particularly on Wall Street. There are a lot of former intercollegiate athletes who are in the ranks. There's something about the commitment, the teamwork, the delivering under pressure that both attracts athletes and makes athletes among the most successful people. And that is even more distinct among women. I think the statistic is that 80% of women in leadership roles in companies played sports, at least at the high school level, if not the college level. So I have to admit, I have a conscious bias that I really love athletes.
Right, right, right. And I think it's funny that you're saying that, because ironically, a lot of athletes that I've spoken to don't realize that, people like you value what they bring to the table, and, value the fact that they have skill sets that are transferable into the corporate world. And so, like, for athletes who may be watching this, who may have never had any internship opportunities while in college, or, working opportunities, how can you advise them to kind of make sure that their transferable skill sets are seen by, executive people, and valued in the same way?
Well, a couple things. One, to the extent you're interested in a certain field, make sure you study up almost like an exam and do a deep dive, whether it's finance, consulting, marketing, and learn as much as you can. But also don't be apologetic. I remember when I went into banking, I said, listen, I've taken exactly 0 finance courses, but here's what I can tell you. I'm a great writer. I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to run through walls, and I'm going to be a great team player. Like, lean into where your strength is. And one thing that athletes certainly don't need to prove is the commitment. So I think we've talked about this for a while. You and I are more in the sprinter camp. I actually love to hire endurance athletes. And there was another Columbia athlete actually multiple Columbia athletes that have either run cross country, or I once hired a young man who swam the mile. And I thought, this guy knows how to suffer. Like, who swims the mile? Like, I would never swim a mile. Our sport is done in what, 30 seconds, 10 seconds? So I hired him almost sight unseen. And lo and behold, he was the best in his class of analysts now in law school. But I think athletes really do bring a lot: the tenacity, the ability to deal with adversity, success as part of a team. Every sprinter will tell you your fastest run is always as part of a relay. It's incredible, whether it's the 4x1 or the 4x4, your fastest split is always faster than you would do without a relay. And that says a lot. So I think it's no surprise that there are so many athletes, and I personally love to hire them.
Yeah. And so I want to take it back a little bit to the relationship component. And you mentioned that out of, most of the athletes that you've connected with, we built the strongest relationship so far. And so taking it back, and I've been in your house, I've been with your kids and everything like that. So taking it back to the early days of our relationship, are there any things that you would say that I did, or any things that happened during the formative stages of our relationship that really helped strengthen what we have now?
Well, first of all, I think chemistry is chemistry. So I think there's just, we really have a lot in common, and we get along. And so that sort of care and friendship started almost immediately. But one thing or two things that I think you've done exceptionally well that are very rare is that you're very respectful of people's time, and you're very clear what your goal is. So if it was, I'd love to get on the phone with you for 15 minutes to talk about this interview, or going back to grad school, or starting a business, you're prepared, you know what you want to get out of it. And by the way, 15 minutes may turn into 45, but that is very respectful. I get a lot of people that say, oh, I'd love to meet, or I'd love to pick your brains. I'm a really busy person. But if someone says you have 15 minutes and I have a specific topic and has done their homework and is prepared, I may have to say it's 2 months from now, but I'm never going to say no. So it's being thoughtful about the other person's time. It's coming with an agenda or something specific you want to gain, and then conveying real gratitude. So I will tell you, I meet with a lot of people and I never even get a thank you email. It's so easy. Send an email, write a note. You'll actually quite distinguish yourself by showing an abundance of gratitude. And you'll love this, Nadia. One of the athletic directors at Columbia, Diane Murphy, who now retired, I used to joke that she had a PhD in thank you. And I learned a lot from her. But She always said thank you. And she would send like brownies on Valentine's Day and Columbia hats and all kinds of swag, like, but it was really nice. So think of that. Aspire to have a PhD and thank you. Now, the other point of connection, as you indicated, is I also introduced Nadia to our kids because she could train them and show them what it takes to be a serious athlete, whether they become triple jumpers or soccer players. And I thought she was, and I still think she's such an incredible role model for our daughters and our sons. So you may connect with someone in ways you don't even anticipate.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was I had no intention in going into investment banking, but for me it was just having someone that could be a mentor for me in life, and just having someone that I could, bounce off my ideas, get advice on various things. And we've talked about things that are unrelated to, track or, whatever it is, but I think having someone who I look up to was definitely fundamental, in building that relationship and, leading to other things that have been great. So once again, we talked about time. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but what are some of the active steps you think athletes can take into building these connections? Because in the track and field world, for example, like when we go to track meets and, at great competitions, there are a lot of people that I think athletes should connect with. But a lot of the times everyone's so focused on the competition and they don't take advantage of that opportunity. So what are some of the first steps you think that athletes can take to making these sorts of connections?
So it is really hard, but you almost have to think about it the way you would think of, lifting or stretching or whatever your sport is, and almost dedicate the time and say, okay, I'm going to take 2 hours on Friday afternoon or an hour on Tuesday mornings and an hour on Saturday afternoon. And I'm going to think about developing my own personal board of directors. And who are the people? It could be people that went to your high school, people that went to your college, people that have competed in your sport, but maybe 10 or 20 years older. It could be people that support your sport. You could have a point of connection that you don't even know if you're not from the US. It could be someone from your home country. Nadia and I have brainstormed about other Ghanaians and Ghanaian Americans. It could be someone from your hometown. So there are many, many ways to find affinity. And you would be surprised. There are people out there that want to connect with you, but it is a bit, for the hockey players, it's a bit of a shots on goal. You need to cultivate many to find your group. And it might be 5 people or 8 people, but you may have to reach out to 50 to find your 5. And that's okay.
Yes,
exactly. But don't worry, Nadia, I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not worried.
You're stuck with me.
7 years is a long time. It's been a long time coming. So before we wrap this up, I just wanted to get one more question in. And the last question is, so for athletes who are watching this, who want to take active steps into building themselves in the corporate world, they may not want to compete. What kind of steps do you think are the actionable steps that they can take, leaving this interview, the next step that they can take into setting themselves up?
Right. I think there's some element of preparation. So it could be going to get an MBA or a master's in a field. It could be even things like when I was going into banking, reading the Wall Street Journal and Barron's, or whatever if you're going into being a Hollywood agent, it's reading the Hollywood Reporter. So whatever is kind of the press or the communication of that field, I guess now a lot of it is digital. It could be, of course, networking. And really doing the hard work about what it is that attracts you to that field. Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to work in a big company? Do you want to do work that's solitary? Do you want to work on a big team? Really understanding what you're good at, what you like. And remember also that we're going to live a long time, hopefully. So you may have multiple careers, and that's okay too.
Well, it's been great catching up with you. I'm really glad that, the world gets to get insight into what I get to experience on a personal level. And really thank you so much, Lisa, for your time. I'm really sure that a lot of athletes out there are going to benefit from, this time that we spent together. And I'm sure we will be engaging you more in some of the stuff that we do. But honestly, thank you so much. And on behalf of the Accelerate team, I just want to say thank you so much for being our spotlight for the month.
Well, you're welcome. It's great to be with you always, Nadia, and I'm really excited to see where you and your team takes Accelerate. So
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.